chip in all humans. This house will implant the smart chip in all humans. Same motion. This house will implant the smart chip in all humans. Please start my timer on my first word. Panel, we think that the existence of this technology is something that operates on the idea that public safety outweighs the philosophical concerns regarding autonomy that the teams in opposition may raise, because we believe that this intervention is something that is only limited to criminal behavior and acts as some sort of insurance for wider society to ensure that we make society safer. 3 things that we're going to prove in order for us to win this debate. We think firstly, we're going to show you how the existence of the smart chip conditions human behavior so that we're safer towards each other, and this is likely to result in a net good for society. I'm going to analyze what this pragmatic impact actually looks like. Secondly, it's very important to note that state has an obligation to do this because the very existence of state within status quo is to condition social behavior so that we're able to create safer societies. We're going to prove to you why this is the best manifestation of this societal conditioning and why it's likely to result in better outcomes than what we already have with regards to how state attempts to condition social behavior within status quo. Lastly, we're going to prove that there's enough capacity for individuals to be able to maintain their own choices and to be able to exercise their autonomy. This is because the smart chip does not dictate the decisions that individuals are going to make. It merely explains the consequences. This is why this is important. In the majority of circumstances, when individuals commit crimes, they are limited in their capacity to sort of interrogate the long-term consequences of that particular action. Firstly, secondly, they lack the empathy to understand what the resulting effect on the people that they are committing this crime upon are likely to relate and how they're going to be affected. We think at a point at which individuals do not have this foresight of what these crimes actually look like, and they do not have an idea of what those consequences are going to look like, it's very important that we're able to give them that idea. I'll take a provide from you.
Do you want them to keep as well? Do you give these chips to kids as well?
Do you give the chips to kids as well? The motion says to all human beings. You have juvenile centers and juvenile prisons. We think it's very important that we do not buy the opposition case where they want us to continue having high recidivism rates among young children and societies unable to rehabilitate them. In terms of argument there, firstly, it's important to note that we are able as opening government to breach the empathy gap that exists within status quo, and this is instrumental in the 3 arguments that I'm going to raise. The first argument on why state has a moral responsibility to do this. We think it's important to understand the characterization of state as already playing a paternalistic role within status quo, right? This looks like the billboards that you see when you're driving on the road that tell you not to drink and drive because drinking and driving is likely to have negative consequences, right? We think this particular smart chip is an extension of that. But if anything, this is a better extension and a better manifestation of that paternalistic role that the state already plays within status quo, because it has the capacity to amplify the positive impact of the control that the state is already practicing. This is why majority of the messaging that we see on the roads is very divorced from who you are as individuals, right? I think when you see a billboard that's directed for every individual that exists within society, it doesn't speak to you personally. It doesn't speak to the consequences that you experience as an individual. We think these things are ineffective, and that's why we see high crime rate within status quo insofar as they inform the decisions that people make with regards to whether or not they commit crimes, because it lacks that personal aspect that speaks to how this is going to affect your life, that speaks speaks to how you should feel emotionally about the impact that you have on people that you live with. I'll engage the other team in opposition before I move on. Okay, moving on. We think secondly, the reason why this is important in terms of impact, a lot of state expenditure is wasted on monitoring and corrective mechanisms within status quo. We have prison systems that do not have the capacity to inform people before they're even subject to getting into prisons effectively about the sort of consequences that exist for those crimes, right? That's why we have Chikurubi being full to the brim and individuals struggling within those prisons because they do not have the capacity to take care of them. Panel, the expenditure that state has to use on those prison systems to look after people while failing dismally to rehabilitate them is unjustified insofar as the state is not performing its role of ensuring that they inform people more effectively of the consequences of these crimes and ensure that they prevent them from committing these crimes. We think in our world, at the very least, we're able to lessen that burden on prison systems and on judicial systems because the focus is no longer on just arresting every single person who otherwise would have committed these crimes. I want to give an example for this out of time. I want to give an example of this before to illustrate what this idea looks like. We think in the majority of circumstances, if someone wants to commit a crime or rob a bank, the motivation behind that is because this person is hungry. The motivation behind that is because this person has money. They do not need money. They do not have foresight or explicit foresight of the actual consequences and the actual harms that they cause on people that exist within status, the people that exist within those communities. We think at a point at which we're able to raise that level of empathy within these individuals, we're able to reduce spontaneous crimes that otherwise wouldn't have happened because people were fueled by things other than the need to just commit a crime for the sake of it. We think individuals are able to evaluate their choices and see that they can get better money elsewhere. The impact of this is that at a point at which we're able to reduce the number of criminals to people that are committing crimes simply because they are criminal at heart and in their minds, we're able to tailor these prison systems to have more rehabilitative structures. Vote opening government panel because we think in our world we're able to reduce recidivism and we're able to
Am I audible like this? I speak like this? Okay. All right. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Chair, no time for fancy introductions. There are 3 important things you're going to get exclusively from all that win this debate. First, extraneous rebuttal as to why urges out of this debate immediately. Secondly, a key principle that is going to stand throughout this debate and will show you again why their best case is something that is a bit of a slippery slope. Okay, so let's start with the rebuttal. He has the guts to say the state will do this. Chair, in the vast majority of cases, the state cannot be detected by an external entity. Note, Chair, the InfoSlide says that this is something that is created. So immorality is confined to the creator. That is to say, these are standards that are made up by some random person that we do not know. They say the state, which makes it even worse. We think you are confining that morality. Notice that compared to your other report, you have the fluidity to change your morality. That is to say, as human beings, we change over time. Meaning that we're able to choose on our side of the world what we deem is moral and what we deem is not moral. The other side of the world, you have a technology that is generic or that generalizes that lived experiences and that lived experiences and makes it seem that you are a static individual, that you are the same person from 2015 till now. I think that on our side of the world, you have that fluidity and I think that is fundamentally important in principle. But secondly, note that it is fundamentally wrong for you to necessarily use this insofar as even if it is perfect, it is unable to understand your unique morality. That is to say, there is someone in Uganda who goes to church, who listens to their parents, but deep down inside they are queer and they haven't come out to their parents. What this essentially means is that this technology simply analyzes your behavioral experiences, your memories, but it doesn't analyze, for instance, that queer Ugandan kid in Uganda who doesn't necessarily want to come out and tell their parents that they're actually queer. Note that they don't fundamentally look at that. But secondly, even if you have this particular, even if this particular thing is perfect, notice that you cannot opt out. That is to say, at least in current status quo, where you have different structures in which individuals can find a pathway to understanding their morality, there's a way you can opt out. There's a way you can choose to cheat. Note on the other side of the world, when the chip is in your flipping brain, there's nothing you can flipping do. It's this thing that consistently detects to you what is moral and what is right. We think in principle, whether this machine is perfect or whether this machine is imperfect, this is a fundamental assault to human dignity. I'll take your view on it.
Banqobi, who gave you your ID number? Who gave you your ID number?
Okay, Chair, here's the thing. They are going to tell you that, oh, the state probably already has some level of influence over your life and over your identity. But even in that particular weird scenario, we still think we need to preserve that legal autonomy that we still have over this powerful state that has so much monopoly on violence and so much monopoly on controlling human autonomy. We believe it is fundamentally important for us to preserve that. Now, let's look at the best case scenario on their side of the world. Note, Chair, that on our side of the world, you are still able to have reformation of character. That is to say, the human being is an evolving creature. You are able to contemplate whenever you make mistakes. You are able to understand what went wrong. You're a social being that have people around you who can call you out. Within those types of structures or that type of setup is able to create permanent change insofar as it is an internal conviction that stems from you. On their side of the world, it is a machine. Note that it is unable to create that permanent reform insofar as it is not something that is internal to you that you deeply want, but this is something that stems from a chip. But secondly, what we tell you here on our side of the world is that it's unclear why people will listen to that chip in the first place. They tell you that, oh, this chip is there to create or motivate. It is unclear why people will listen. Notice how in the vast majority of cases, even if we buy into their frame, people commit crimes while knowing the law. People commit crimes while having information. They need to prove why all of a sudden this information from a chip is something you're going to really listen to, something you're going to be convicted to. We think individuals fundamentally do crime regardless of the fact that they know the sanctions and they know all of the different consequences that come from that. But two, notice that this chip does not have sanctions. It will simply tell you that if you do this decision, X, Y, Z harm will happen. Note that that is not a sanction that can propel or motivate someone to do something, because even if you go against that, that is something
you are right now, purely because Mason said judging this debate is a good idea, it is interesting. You went to school because your parents told you that getting an education was fundamentally good and it was something that would probably be good for you. You have the current ID number that you have and the birth certificate that you have because state ascribed it to you. Opening opposition cannot just say choices are important in a vacuum and not show you how we assault that choice in a unique way that it hasn't historically been assaulted in. The response to the entirety of OO is very simple. Every single choice you have ever made has been impacted by things that were out of your control, things that were defined by state, by your parents, by all other arbitrary factors in life. They cannot prove that this is a unique assault on that ability of yours to choose, and if they can't prove that, the entirety of opposition bench cannot win this debate. I think the second thing that's also really, really important to define here in this particular debate is why is state the unique actor that has the capacity to make this specific decision? Because the response is very lazy. They tell you that state is sometimes a harmful actor and you should always err on the side of caution. That is abhorrent. At best, that case is an anarchist case. Unless they are willing to defend a world where state doesn't exist at all, and primarily a world where state doesn't make any particular decision, that is not an argument they can run. Because as long as they live in a state, they have to confirm the idea that you have to exist and abide by the social contract that that state upholds. Uniquely, however, if it tells you how this does not prescribe itself as an assault by the state, for two key reasons. The first is that what this particular machine does is, A, it's simply a harm calculus machine. It explains to you the potential harms of the actions that you partake as an individual and then allows you to make a decision that is more morally upright because you're well aware of the harms that come as an outcome of the specific actions that you make. Before I continue, Haniel, yes.
Do you think Kim Jong-un should have access to this technology?
Absolutely. The reason why Kim Jong-un has killed so many people is because he lives in a really nice house where he doesn't have to interact with and see the people who die every time he issues an abhorrent order. What that shit does on the outside is when he says go bomb 50,000 people, it gives him an actual imaging of 50,000 people dying. It makes him less likely to be willing to do that very specific thing. Literally, that is the world in which they have to defend. Be serious. I think next thing that's also really, really important here, because debaters like this, here's the anti-capitalist extension that everyone
Am I audible? I can't use this. Am I audible? I'll begin my speech in 3, is it fine, Chief? 7 minutes 15, right? I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1, start. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1, start. Very quickly, let's deal with the team that is on Ochi and take it out of this debate. The motion says morality. The extent to which we are supposed to have this debate is based on the extent to which morality is particularly concerned. That is to say, whether or not you walk on the streets in what is perceived as a short skirt or a long skirt. That is what this debate is about, not the idea of people who commit heinous crimes and otherwise take people to particular graves and they otherwise need to be arrested. We think there is a mischaracterization of what this debate is about on Ochi. I think the vast majority of instances, you need to appreciate the extent to which the motion is rightfully engaged by LO in the idea of what morality in and of itself is. Notice that response alone responds to the vast majority of instances to what Providence says in her initial speech and what Menzie otherwise gathers audacity to cover, which is otherwise very irrelevant insofar much as the debate is concerned. But let me engage them in their best case scenario. Menzie comes into the debate and says, you know what, we say we're going to let the state particularly be in control of this particular thing. The problem that exists with Menzie particularly saying that the state is going to be in control is because the state already takes a lot of things from us in Karen. Why is that wrong? I'm going to mechanize it beyond what the normal state power principle says. The vast majority of cases, the things that we are willing to give the state in terms of a freedom that we are willing to trade off are things that are otherwise generally reversible. But the vast majority of cases, something like morality is something that is so fundamental to the individual human being. Because it's so fundamental to the individual human being, we can't be comfortable with that particular trade-off of giving our morality to the state. Sit down. I think the next thing that you need to cover is the idea that men says, how does it stop your choices because it just advises you. The mere idea of knowing in men's side that the chief tells you that you're going to spend life in prison when you particularly do a certain action is enough of an irrationality to govern the actions that you particularly take. So in the vast majority of cases, that in and of itself is constraining to the autonomy and choices that the individual can otherwise make. Let's get into the particular case that we have 4 unique ideas from the speech extensional to what Banqobi tells you. I think firstly, you need to understand that the idea of the human being, insofar much as morality is concerned, is something that is larger than a mere attempt to achieve a perfect morality. The idea is this: we value the mistakes and the particular failures that you make in the path to becoming a morally upright individual. The vast majority of instances, what this message is to the debate is the extent to which you as an individual, you principally do not value the excellent morally upright individual being who is the product of a certain process, but the pathway to the perfectness in morality is otherwise what is that which is utmostly important insofar much as this debate is concerned. Why do we gain it? The idea that you particularly go into things blindly otherwise gives you the ability to experience these things firsthand. But when Menzie's chief tells you, hand in hand with Ebenezer, that, oh no, you know what, the actions that you are taking are otherwise very much self-defeating, the vast majority of instances, you don't get to experience that path. We say in the vast majority of instances, for the purposes of life, that path is something that is otherwise extremely important. Second principle in this particular speech, I think the idea is this: morality is just but a social construct. That is to say, they need to show you beyond any reasonable doubt why morality is something that is so important that human beings should have it being standardized for them. The vast majority of instances, morality is subjective and based on the average individual being. Many women are free with walking in town with short skirts. A lot of mothers think that they are supposed to wear long skirts. But the vast majority of instances, the idea that makes morality something so individualistically important is the autonomy to govern over morality that the individual principle that cannot be overridden by men. I think the vast majority of cases, you need to understand the nature of AI. I think the process that AI, in Menzi's case, wants to reduce to something that you simply have various things that particularly tell you the harms or the benefits of doing a certain action are otherwise inherently very harmful. Why? AI works by generally mathematicalizing each and every piece and single set of data. The human being is otherwise neurologically complex as an individual who undergoes extreme neurological processes. So the vast majority of instances, these neurological particular processes are extremely important. They have to show you why at any point in time it's principally justified to reduce those particular neurological processes that makes us unique as an individualized civilization into something that can particularly be governed by simple AI. The vast majority of cases, Menzie doesn't do that. Ebenezer is going to come here and I'm telling you, your kids, be careful. He's going to synthesize the whole debate. The particular stance of this debate is this. He's lying. Don't listen to him. There's lost the debate. I think the next thing that you need to understand, in so how much as the debate is concerned, is why you might say it's wrong to standardize the biology individual. Yes,
The biggest problem with all of this case is that this entire case is about whether or not the AI tells you a miniskirt is good. The AI tells you the harms of the action that you take. The entire morality case is abhorrent. It's not ascribing whether you should go to church or not.
Something tells you your harms, it actively leads to you particularly influenced to take a certain decision that aligns with those particular harms. So one way or another, there is a certain extent to which this particular technology dictates what you are supposed to do. I think the last thing I'm going to talk about is this particular motion hand in hand with this InfoSlide fails to appreciate the particular diversity that the human being race particularly holds in so far much as society is concerned. Understand, this is a principle. The extent to which you are able to generally understand that the human beings are such but a unique existence in a vast universe is something that is otherwise inherently important. Whether mortals are bad or good, we value them in existence in a vacuum because they idealistically exist as a diversity that can otherwise never be repeated. To that extent, I don't get why something that exists as 1 out of a billion will particularly message to the extent that you standardize the morality that governs how it particularly behaves. To that particular extent, I think if you are generally average individual debaters, you're going to be able to understand the sophistication that will otherwise give you as CO joins us in the Master's Final.
This marks the end of the opening of the debate. It will now welcome the member of Parliament to open the closing of this debate.
I still want people to speak like this. Can you still hear me? Yeah, right? Okay. Allow me to come this in. 3, 2, and 1. The concepts of good and bad have always been violent in nature. They were created to oppress and suppress by individuals who had a monopoly on violence and were individuals who determined who had the highest hierarchies in that society. Morality is something that was based on these concepts. But secondly, we realized that we needed morality. We needed morality in order for us to remain functional, because as a society that was intertwined and interrelated, that morality helped ensure that we live to shackle. For individuals, you call thieves. For some of them, they were raised in environments that taught them that was the only means they had to survive, and we want to correct this injustice. The current injustice in the status quo is that we punish these individuals without giving them any form of redress and allowing them to be able to change the philosophies that probably make them socially unacceptable. But further than that, in our world, we are going to change something fundamentally important. Their main case or their main cry is that we standardize morality and what's good and bad. We tell you standardization of morality exists in their world, where morality is based on who is in power, which books are read, which books are valued, and all those things, and we want to change that. We think in our world, morality is going to be based on lived experiences. Why is this particularly true? One unique feature of this chip is that it uses your memories and the starting of behavioral patterns. Why is it particularly important what your memories are? Your memories contain something very important. What is right and wrong is something humans learn to develop by simply judging the way people look at them, the way people treat them, the way people interact with them, how that society functions, and all those things. But most importantly, how that makes you feel and the type of person you want to be. Why this is so important is that if they talk about law, in Nazi Germany, killing Jews was something illegal, it was something praised by the state. And the soldiers believed they were doing the right thing because they didn't come as a book to back them up. But the one thing they'll never forget is the way the mothers who had their children burned looked at them and the way that made them feel. We think we value that because in that society, they would have never not known that that action was immoral. The second thing that's important is that this society is this chip is something that's not rigid. Why is that rigid? Why is it particularly something that's not rigid? Particularly because it is based on lived experiences, behavioral patterns, and memories. It means you do not carry an overarching sense of morality. For most individuals, you are born to believe that the society you exist in, the morality your parents teach you, is higher than others. If you are of a certain religious sect, your morality is superior to that of everyone else. Why does that change in our world? In our world, as you get new lived experiences, as you get new memories, as you get new environments, your morality changes. We think we get the greatest form of progress in terms of ideology and thinking and all those things, and we value that. But primarily in our world, you get the
Already we say but show us how these people get to change over time, because you're saying the morality is a metric. Which metric are you using?
They want to know, that very question is they want to know how people change over time. Firstly, you change over time primarily, you change over time primarily by the experiences that are replayed to you as these encounters happen. So for example, when the chief is telling you that this will hurt people, it shows you a behavioral pattern where you repeated that same action and the outcome was the same. We think it's valuable because for a lot of human beings, we are generally narcissistic and we think there is no correlation between our actions and the harms that happen. We think it's a coincidence that maybe I said that one thing and maybe person A was just too emotional. When the chief shows you that you say the same thing to A, B, C, D, E, you put them in a corner without showing them the impact is something that is highly unjust. Secondly, in our world, we democratize that and give it and make it accessible to people. Now we see.
Thank you so much for that inspiring speech. Now I'm the member of opposition. We are here.
Right. Hello. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. How do you know how funny it sounds for you to say you're going to gaslight 10 band by showing them a video of him killing people to stop killing people? It's so weird to say that you have criminals that meditate crime and you show them the video of the crime that they're about to commit. Vivid, you allow them to visualize. Literally, Kim Jong-un gets heavy knowing that people die. He lives for it. So you can't say that you are going to gaslight criminals into like rehabilitation. The only people that are going to rehabilitate on the side of government are people that are going to be haunted by their memories. This means these are people that can be rehabilitated even without the chief, because these are very weak people that committed these crimes out of, I don't know, consequence or circumstance, I mean to say. So, because the government doesn't have the case, majority of their cases in InfoSlide, they talk about rehabilitation, very fine and engaged. They talk about how people can shape their own morality. It's very weird to say someone is going to shape their own morality and society is going to individuals who define morality according to the experiences that they have. Like, guys, you find it. So the thing is, it is very weird. Over the government comes here and tells you, oh, well, we're not going to have monitoring. If you don't have monitoring, it means you created placebo. This is correct by extension. You created placebo where people think they are safe. Because, well, now you think people are going to be gaslighted to not committing crimes. You reduce monitoring. It means people feel safe because they think people are not going to commit crimes. And they are actually not safe because the only thing that the machine does is gaslight you, but you still continue to commit the crimes. But the comparative is with lesser monitoring on their side, meaning to say that more harm on individuals or exposure, lesser security. If you understand that, you're a good partner. The second thing is to say, let's say, why is it bad to have a chief? It's not. Like, literally, we don't need to prove that it's bad to have a chief. It's just bad for you to say you want to have, especially state institutionalizing. Haniel, you didn't even tell us who's going to do this. And you say, what do you institutionalize? What do you mean? State, man. Right. So the extension here is to say, firstly, you cannot gaslight individuals who commit crimes and premeditate crimes by showing them the crimes. It's very weird. So I want to extend on 4 things here. The first thing is the nature of human beings. Very big, life is going to be boring. Guys, do you understand how we get so much enjoyment from intrusive thoughts that we don't get to end up doing, but just thinking about? Now imagine you have a machine that keeps on gaslighting you every time you have an intrusive thought. Honestly speaking. Secondly, like your thoughts are shaped by your consumption pattern. It means now you also have to monitor the things that you consume on TV, for example. Very weird, because now it means that all those memories constantly recur and you keep on getting haunted by the memories that you have, particularly weird. We think also that the
said by anyway, so the thing is like, so the special rights of guilt, that's the problem. So you constantly get to question yourself. And the thing is, morality is not as subjective on their world as they want to assume it. It's objective. We know socially acceptable behavior is no, meaning to say that you are going to feel guilty every time you have a progressive thought. Someone feels like they are different in a way, they are gaslit by the machine because, oh my God, if you do this, people are going to resent you. Literally, those are the kind of things that it says to you, that if you come out as being gay, people are going to hate you. You don't do it. It means that you are unlikely going to have progressive ideas in society, which is particularly harmful. The other extension is to say, I think this is the third one, that imagine dictators, guys, societies where dictators rule. Menzie wants to equate Kim Jong-un saying, like passing a chip that is going to tell you that if you don't like me, you're a bad person. Kim Jong-un saying your ID number is 08242. It's a problem. The moral compass of dictators is very questionable. That is to say that the objective feature of their morality is likely going to be very problematic. We think also the other problem is, 5 minutes, yeah. So the thing is, fluidity, right? The thing is that when you have a machine that is constantly gaslighting you and telling you that this is bad, you are likely going to be cautious of your morals. That means that you are likely going to be an individual who conforms so much that you don't accept anything else which is beyond what you have been taught to be socially acceptable. This creates echo chambers in societies where people don't want to be fluid in terms of their morality, where people don't interact, because the minute you interact with someone who is questionable, you're going to be gaslit. Literally speaking, is a problem. The other thing is to say that what's also the idea? Oh yeah, also the placebo idea. I've already talked about that one. To say individuals necessarily end up feeling unsafe or end up feeling safe in societies, and there is a manufactured safety. We think it's a problem because, quite literally speaking, on their side of the world, what they are saying is we relax the criminal justice system, we relax monitoring, which is very problematic. In his speech, Menzie also said the government will know, they will punish you. Assuming government knows, it means there is likely going to be more monitoring on their side of the world even. So it becomes very questionable and it becomes necessarily problematic. So I've already given you 4 key extensions in this debate. It was not a debate about whether or not what was the case? Yeah, so it's not a debate about whether or not individuals should not have the chip. It's not a debate about whether or not individuals can be rehabilitated. I think we've already talked about that one. It is not a debate about whether or not individuals should have a chip and that would be paid for you to have a chip. Literally, we like terminate. So what Ebe needs to come and do in this debate is to ditch the InfoSlide, give us something tangible. Firstly, Ebe, tell us how are you going to do this? Who is going to do this? It's a policy motion. Come on. How, all right, tell us at least how are you institutionalizing? And once you tell us that, please tell the panel why individuals should have their own unique objectives.
In my speech in 4, 3, 2, 1. We think Zie, maybe if Zie had a chip, it would have told him that the case he was about to run doesn't work into the debate. Being funny doesn't win debates, Zie. Arguments do. The extent of your case is the fact that no, individuals are being gaslit into not being criminals. The argumentation from government debate was not individuals who are going to stop being criminals. The argumentation that individuals who commit crimes because they don't know that the action they're doing are wrong are unlikely to do so. To make the debate about Ted Bundy and individuals of circulars, it's outside the scope of the debate that probably even though she did it was being clearly was able to outframe today's debate. The other extension we get from CEO is the idea of the creation of socially acceptable behavior, telling us how do we do so. We give you 2 mechanizations to status quo. Firstly, we'll tell you that right now the problem we have is that morality is defined in society. The short skirt example that Bracey talks about, the reason why you get funny looks when you walk in a short skirt is because society has told you that doing so is fundamentally wrong. Within what we do in our world, that we deinstitutionalize the fact that there are individuals in society who control what morality looks like, and morality then arbitrated based on what you individually feel. Meaning, at a point in the delta of the debate is, we're able then to destabilize the oppressive moral systems that are kind of status quo within CEOs running first for fourth. Also, they say that, oh my God, we don't want to live a life of being guilty, and we need to let intrusive thoughts win. Two things. First of all, within your intrusive thoughts don't really matter to the point where you don't really understand what you're going to do. We tell you that the intrusive thought that a person has before they have a minor skill that's detrimental is not fundamentally as important as he wants to make it seem. It's easy for Z, from a perspective of male privilege, to want male intrusive thoughts to win because they cannot understand what the marginalized go through when they let their intrusive thoughts win. When a young woman or who grew up in poor areas makes an intrusive thought, the consequences and the impact of those thoughts are far very rich as Z can ever understand, which is where Haniel's extension is fundamentally important when you deal with a particular case, right? Also, what do we get from the opening opposition quickly in terms of responses? They gave us a few things. They say, A, they talk about how the state is not managed to weaponize. Understand that the debate can't be about who implements this policy, because that's not where the scope of the debate is. Within the debate therefore become, because we all live under the state, right? Within the debate can't be reduced to be the most extreme instances of how the state oppresses violence. But even if that was the case, within the state does not get involved in the operation of the chip, as Haniel tells you. What the chip does is that it studies no individual patterns. It doesn't get input from the state. It only collects input from the individual who's actively using the chip. Meaning that the state's role is only in terms of inputting you, but as far as how the chip processes, that is only exclusively based on your lived experiences and everything else. So the state role that you try and make an issue in this debate, Banqobi, is unsustainable. Secondly, they say it's a fundamental assault to outsource morality. That is the extent of Haniel's extension. The problem with status quo is that currently morality is being outsourced. Currently morality is being defined by everyone else other than you. At a point in time when you write Haniel's extension, where it clearly tells you that at a point in time when this chip is implemented, you are better able to aggregate morality based on your lived experiences. We tell you that the way in which you feel when someone treats you a specific way, or the way in which other people feel when you treat them a specific way, is amalgamated in your own collective conscience and then informs the way you behave. So if I am a racist person, for example, and I racially abuse the first person, and abuse a lot of people, the reaction and the way in which those individuals feel and how they interact with me actively impact the way I'm going to in the future implement or then have in our society, which is the extension that Haniel gives, which fundamentally deals with all the cases we can all. The other idea is that people may not change the decision. We do consider that individuals may not always change the decision, but at the point in time when we remove the
speech now government will close, opposition will to close the debate.
The tendency to try to use marginalized groups in debate to try and win them because they sound so vulnerable is wrong. That's what Ebe has been doing in his extension speech. One, note two things here. They say that individuals get to define their own morality. So imagine this, if you are born in a system where there's drugs, as it says, and drugs are normalized in a serious good, and then you put it in you all of a sudden, they're bad, right? I don't think that's going to be true, but also even in that event, right? When you say institutionalizing, go on to say these institutions or the state cannot be involved, then you are counterintuitive to your own case. Right? You're not showing any sort of problem from your side. But three things that they lose this debate on, right? They say one, they want people to be accepted and the type of morality that they have to be accepted because it's been centralized to people that have been controlling things. Right? I think this is problematic on two things. Right? One, we think the idea of morality is not even just about what people have deemed as good or bad. Right? There's a thin line to what good and bad is. What goes beyond that is to prove how this thing become essentially like educative for those individuals to be protected by this. In such instances, what happens is you give people like Hitler chips to control those tools because they deem those ideas to be like morally true, right? But I'll come back to you, CG. Let me just engage the most relevant government here. So what is opening government to do, right? Opening government tells you very interesting thing when they're telling you about the criminal behavior of individuals. But where they miss the conversation here is when they start telling you how these individuals are most likely going to cut across through all units, right? The idea in that particular regard is they don't control these particular incentives. The biggest push in their case is still we want people to be aware of their actions and the impacts of their actions. We think criminals know this. At the very best, majority of times criminals know the consequences of those things. They most likely enjoy those things in the first place. So imagine you carry that particular picture to a criminal who enjoys this action. We think that is genius to them. We reject that kind of premise. But two, I think the idea of saying that the consequences become the capacity to that particular crime is not that there's contingent to that. Oh, thank you.
You're treading dangerously close to your opening, which is fourth in the debate. We analyze to you why in the majority of circumstances these individuals commit these crimes while knowing the consequences of these crimes because the harms are not proximate to them as individuals. We better the criminal justice system in that regard.
Listen, we can't give an extension or an opening right now. We think what he is trying to tell you right now is to say these individuals are not proximate to the pain that they inflict on others. Literally, he tells you how these individuals literally like those things, right? For example, serial killers find it genius to find different ways to kill people. In that particular regard, when you keep on like recurring that particular chapter, they're enjoying their having to self-actualize, right? You don't think those things become particularly safe. They say also the people who feel safe because there's like that sort of winter. Notice how there's always like a debate about surveillance and how it's particularly bad. This is even worse because there's implanted into everyone, right? Imagine this, right? In any case, when you're trying to sort of like think beyond that particular thing, you are basically thinking those things become are going to be progressively bad for you. But two, we don't think this debate is just about morality. We think it's about manufactured morality, and we reject that kind of idea. When they say that there's oppressive morality from their side, and then they move on to say, we want you to have your individual morality when you have it. Right? We think that's counterintuitive to how those things are brought to the particular debate. In any case, what these guys do is they tell you that these chips are going to be better than human beings. They're complex things because they're able to sort of like move beyond the sort of oppression that they claim they have. Right? But then the other idea that we get from them is that, well, these people will know the motivation behind the time that they're doing, and once they are aware, they want to do them. We don't think that's true, right? In any case, when people are hungry is proximate to those individuals, it's painful, they're going to steal anyway, regardless of the chip, right? So what happens there is those individuals don't even get like the kind of morality that you say argument is, right, is that it tries like these individuals feeling guilty. I think I've already shown you how these individuals are likely to feel guilty